and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to our live show. This is Martin Willis of Podcast UFO. We have a good one for you tonight. We have guests Ruben Uriarte and Noe Torres will be coming up in a little while. Before that, we have Alejandro Rojas with the UFO News. I want to thank all of you listeners who support the show. And if you can't support the show, that's okay. We still appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to listen for free, you can always listen on Wednesday evenings at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at podcastufo.com, where you can also jump in our chat room. And we also run the full shows as a podcast on the Dark Matter Digital Network on Thursdays at 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. You know, I always forget to mention that anyone can comment on any podcast. You have to go in to where the free podcasts are. For some reason, the membership podcasts won't let you comment there. But on the free podcast, you can leave a comment about the guests we have on. And I was reminded of that because our last week's show had some comments come in. Before we get to the news, I want to remind everyone that I am shaving my head bald 1 week from tonight. And this is to benefit Kids for Cancer, along with their families. And we've had some listeners sign up, and I really appreciate it. And I'm about halfway to my $1,000 goal with sponsors. And you can sign up now or anytime before the event on the 13th. And that's you'll see the One Mission Buzz-Off banner right on my website, podcastufo.com, right on the side. And any amount you want to donate is greatly appreciated. And Alejandro, we're going to get started here, but I got something to tell you. It's pretty interesting. How you doing, Alejandro?
I'm doing well, and I like interesting stuff, so that sounds good.
Yeah, well, just about an hour ago, I got an email from a listener that I know from the past. He's been very supportive of the show, and he said I could use his name. His name is Alan Sanderson, and he was poking around on my website today, and he saw that I'm doing this buzz-off on the 13th, and he also saw that I mentioned it was my son's birthday, so it's kind of honoring him and kids in general. So he wrote me a really nice email, and he says, guess what? It's my birthday, too. And if you come up short on that $1,000 goal, I will put in the difference.
Awesome.
And if you hit that goal or exceed it, I will still donate, he says. Isn't that
cool.
something? Yeah, that really makes you help with that old humanity thing for sure. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Humans aren't so
very much,
bad,
Alan.
you know?
That's really nice. So I'm hoping that our guest tonight will be Noe Torres. I'll be reaching out to him right after the news. Again, his Skype crash, he just texted me that it's okay. And later on, we're going to be joined by no one other than Ruben Uriarte. And we're going to get into talking about Aurora and a couple of other things. In the second part of the show, we're going to be talking about something that I have a fascination in, and the reason why I contacted the two in the first place. And that's the Cisco Grove encounter. Alejandro, have you ever looked into that one?
Well, I've interviewed the guys about it.
Oh, I guess you have then. Isn't that a fascinating case that nobody really seems to talk much about?
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's
it
really
is a weird one.
So, yeah, it's fun to talk to these guys about what happened.
Yeah, excellent. So what's going on with you? How are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. Doing good. Keeping busy.
You saying not a lot is going on for UFO News, but do you have anything for us?
Oh, I definitely do, yeah. Not a lot, but there are some stories. In fact, the UFO news stories today that have been out there have been one of our stories, and it's frustrating because the UK tabloids have been all over UFO stories, and we've talked about this, and I kind of even say that we're like in the era of UK tabloid UFO because they're picking up stories and putting them all over the place, most of them not very good stories, and they're kind of, then these get picked up by some of the mainstream media, and they're setting the pace, unfortunately, really, with the media. And my only beef with them is they pick up our stories and then they don't give us credit or link back. At least I saw one of the papers did. But I don't know. You and I talked about this before the UK picked it up, I think on my show on Monday. But this is a sighting that happened on November 7th, 2015. And one of the interesting aspects is that it was a guy who was in the military. And it's in West Carrollton, Ohio. It was about 6:30 p.m. when he said he saw two craft. He described them as looking like spinning gems with no sound. He said they were spinning in unison and appeared to be flying in formation. Now, these are 2 points of light. So
wow.
I don't know how you would determine they're flying in formation. But, they move across the sky and then they fade out. He said that they were traveling at an unusual speed, but they did not make any abnormal maneuvers, just that they were kind of moving and then disappeared. So he didn't think that they were like a regular plane, and they don't look like an airplane. He lives about 15 minutes from Wright-Patterson in Ohio. And he says he's worked there and that he's worked as a mechanic for the military for some time. The video, if you look at the video alone, it looks like Chinese lanterns. I mean, they look like two flickering lights that fade out, which is the same thing that Chinese lanterns do. But this person said it looked different than that. So take it for what you will, I suppose.
Now, when was this posted? I don't remember us talking specifically about this.
No, and this guy he's an aircraft mechanic for 30 years, so he would know airplanes, so I guess that makes it more interesting. But we posted this one, Roger Marsh, the Director of Communications for MUFON, posted this one on March 31st.
Yeah.
So what was that? That was like Thursday.
I don't think we talked about it because I don't remember anything about.
No, we didn't.
The gems, they look like gems now, and that's one I don't think I've ever heard.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, could a Chinese lantern be described as a gem shape? Possibly. I think it probably could, but it is granted, and I think a lot of people might argue, how is an aircraft mechanic going to mistake these Chinese lanterns for something more unusual? And true, this is someone who is educated, obviously, on aircraft, but I kind of have a feeling that maybe he did make that mistake. But, maybe not. Look at the video and see what you guys think and, give your own response. So you probably haven't looked at this video then.
No, I haven't. But I will tell you.
Okay. It's really short.
Okay. I may have mentioned this before in a show in the past, but I was out on, July 4th. I think it was 2 years ago. And someone lit up and put up the Chinese lanterns. And I understand why people call about those things. I mean, they really do look like something fantastic in the sky. So,
yeah.
I mean, it really, if it wasn't July 4th and I didn't see them, released, because I saw them when they were lighting them and let them up and everything. If I didn't see that and I just was like driving by and I looked over and I saw that floating in the sky, I would totally think, wow, what the heck is that? If I didn't know anything.
I agree with you. They look, it's like these piercing lights in the sky. They look really cool. And you can't tell distance when you're looking at them. I've seen them fly over before as well, and they look really cool. But and I've also launched them on several occasions. On one, I took some video so I could post it online and use it for stories to show the difference between, Chinese lanterns and whatever alleged UFO video we're posting. But you're right, they look really cool.
So this was in Ohio?
That was in Ohio.
I see.
And there is another interesting video that was posted. We posted just yesterday.
Well, let's hear it.
Yeah, this sighting was April 15th, 2015. The last one, as well as this one, the MUFON investigators closed as an unknown. This one is kind of weird. You can't see the video, the object for very long. The guy had a problem looking at it, but you do see it. And Roger wrote this story again, and he was able to get a couple snapshots from the video so you can see the object better. And the object does look up in the sky. It's a large black cylinder shape. So it is pretty strange. This one, however, might be another IFO in that there are something called solar balloons out there, which is essentially you just fill up this long plastic black bag, really, with air, and the sun heats it because it's black, and it floats on its own. And this does really look like that. In fact, when I posted this, I posted that this could be a solar balloon, and I put a link to an Amazon posting for one of these things where you could buy one, and it looks very similar. And I guess Mark D'Antonio then replied, and he said, I actually did an analysis on this video, and that's what I determined it probably was. And Mark D'Antonio is the photo and video analyst for MUFON, and he says that one of the things is, and this is the hard part, because even if it's not a solar balloon, you can't rule that out because it doesn't make any movement or it does not look unlike one. A solar balloon could create this effect. And that's what becomes hard with UFO videos. It's just like the two lights that look like gems, two Chinese lanterns is a possibility given the video alone. And maybe, they are something else. But with the video by itself, you can't make that determination.
I saw a UFO video a while ago, I'm going to say a couple of years ago, that caught my eye. Because one of the things that is not talked about a lot, or not a lot of people seem to talk about them, is the cigar-shaped UFOs. So I was looking for cigar-shaped UFOs one day, and I saw one, posted on YouTube, and I opened it up, and right away, my first thought is, it was black, and it was sort of like sausage-shaped, and I thought right away it has to be one of those solar balloons. I mean, it just makes total sense, because now, how far up in the atmosphere do those things go on their own? Do you happen to know?
I would assume they could go very high.
Yeah. And that could be a problem for a jetliner if it goes high enough.
It could. I've heard of stories. In fact, one of the great sources still in the UK for official UFO investigations is this organization that analyzes near misses. So this is when, two planes get close to each other, or when an object is in the airspace and almost hits a plane. The airplanes will report this, and they have an organization that investigates those. Sometimes those turn out to be unidentified, and sometimes they're really interesting stories. And when we'll post those, when they come across. And one of them, funny enough, was one of those balloon remote-controlled sharks.
Right.
And it had actually, gotten loose, and so it was high enough where this plane, had flown near it and thought it was going to hit it. I don't know that it would have done much damage or anything, but they were concerned enough, where they put in a report to this near-miss agency. But, that was a case where one of these toy balloons getting out of control, could have caused a problem. I don't know if that might have caused a problem if it gets caught in a jet, or something.
Can you imagine being in the cockpit of a passenger airplane with all those people you're responsible for and seeing a shark?
Yeah.
It's like one of those movies, what is it, Shark Tornado? It's like another saga.
Yeah, Sharknado or Airplane. I can see someone looking out of the window and yelling, "Shark! Shark!" And
then you hear the music, of course.
It's not like you can run out of the water, so what would people do? Probably they'd run in circles and jump up and down and like on the movie Airplane.
That should have been part of that movie. Is there anything else going on?
I don't think so.
All right, man. Well, it's always
so that's
great.
about all. Yeah, good. It's still interesting stuff. I mean, videos. It's great that Roger's able to look into the files and pull this stuff out. And it's helpful. It's learning too for the MUFON investigators. So I certainly implore people to comment and let people know if you think I'm full of it. If you're like, what's Alejandro talking about? These are UFOs and these are aliens. And you may be right. What do I know?
I love your imitations. Every time you do an imitation, a good one, I get the email. Your best one that people still can't believe it was was when you did Arnold saying, go ahead, do the Arnold. Just throw it out there. Who's your daddy?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, yeah.
Get to the chopper. Get your ass to Mars. No, it was Who's Your Daddy, huh?
Yeah, Who's Your Daddy?
Who's your daddy and what does he do?
That was it. Yeah, perfect. All right, man. Well, you have a great week, and we'll be talking to you just next week.
All right. Yeah, talk to you soon, buddy.
All right. Have a good one.
Oh, tell Noe and Ruben hi from me. They're my good buddy.
I certainly will. So our guests coming up, first of all, we have Noe Torres will be coming up in just a minute. And later on, Ruben Uriarte will be joining us. And they have written a number of books about famous UFO cases, including Aliens in the Forest. We're going to be talking about that in the second hour. And the Coyame Incident, Fallen Angel, UFOs over Mexico, Mexico's Roswell, and the real Cowboys in Aliens. I love that. Well, they've appeared separately and together on a number of many television shows, including UFO Hunters, UFO Files, Monster Hunters, Ancient Aliens, Mysteries in the National Parks, and UFOs over Earth. Their research is featured in an upcoming film by Patrick Connolly titled They Rode the Flying Saucers. They also appear frequently on other radio shows and speak at numerous UFO conferences each year. Uriarte is the director of the Mutual UFO Network in Northern California, and Torres is a former MUFON and state section director from Texas. He's right on the border of Texas. He said it's hot as heck there today. All right, so hang in right after this music break, and we'll be right back with Noe Torres. Noe Torres, how are you?
All right. Technical problems aside, I'm here, Martin. Thanks for having me on tonight. Yes.
Yeah. We had your Skype crashed and burned right just as we were starting the show. So hopefully you got that figured out. It won't happen again.
Well, as near as I can figure, it was updating itself in the background, and I didn't realize it. So you know how those things go.
Well, I'll tell you, you're not the first person that this has happened to. This is I've heard other people talk about Skype updating while they were doing something like this. So that's what it was. The culprit.
Yeah, the problem is I use it infrequently on this particular PC, and so every time I attempt to use it, it starts to update itself. So that apparently was the cause of my problem.
Yeah, you need to start it a day ahead. Anyway, welcome to the show, and Ruben will be joining us later on. He's just going to Skype in, and we'll connect with him. It's always good to have you two on. You were on before. I talked to Ruben when he was visiting Alejandro a while back down in Arizona. Anyway, you have some exciting things to talk about. First of all, for the person that has never heard both either you or Ruben in the past, why don't you give your background? And it's always interesting to hear everybody's story when they first fell in love with UFOs. So let's hear it.
Well, I grew up in the 60s, and as far back as I can remember, as a child, my mom used to tell me a story about a very strange encounter she had one evening before I was born. This would have been in the 1940s here in South Texas. I live along the border between Texas and Mexico in the area of McAllen, Texas. And she used to tell me this story about an encounter she had in the woods behind our home. We lived in a rural area far removed from other homes, and it was very dark at night. We weren't in a city. And so one night she heard a lot of commotion behind the house, and she wandered out in the middle of the night, sometime after midnight. And she used to tell me this incredible story of a strange object that was above her, and she heard the noise, and she heard strange noises above her and lights illuminating the ground and the trees all around her. And her pet dog at that time, which was a large German Shepherd, jumping up into the air and snapping its jaws at whatever it was above her. So as a child, when she used to tell me this story, what in effect what happened is I was very much of a reader and always have been, and my love of books throughout the years has been quite great. So at that time, I sought out every book that I could find in the mid-'60s. I was a frequent library user, both our local public library and also my school library. And I sought out every book about every UFO case that I could find. And I must have, I read hundreds of books way back then as a kid and became very interested in the topic. Also, the interesting thing about the 60s is, as most of your listeners I'm sure know, we were really strongly into the UFO phenomenon still. The 50s had been the explosion of UFOs and mass UFO sightings throughout the United States, but it continued to a lesser extent perhaps, but also very much so in the 60s until, the end of Project Blue Book in the late 60s and various other factors on a national scene kind of eroded interest in UFOs for a while. Until perhaps Steven Spielberg's series of movies, E.T., Close Encounters, brought it back. But yeah, so the interest in UFOs is something that has persisted in my life from the beginning. And, I've read tons of books on the subject. And professionally, I am a librarian. I have a master's degree in library science from University of Texas at Austin and have been a librarian for close to 25 years now. And every library that I've worked in, I've made sure has a very large and healthy collection of books about UFOs and UFO sightings. So I became interested in actually writing books about UFOs a few years back in partnership with Ruben Uriarte, who will be on a little while later will be on your show. But he and I had a number of discussions because I was working on a book about Texas UFO cases at the time that I first contacted Ruben. And he had done research into an alleged UFO incident that occurred in West Texas along the Texas-Mexico border, kind of northwest of where I live. And he was about the only one in the whole country that I had found reference to. I did some internet searches and some periodical literature searches, and he was one of the few people that had been doing anything with that case. So I called him, emailed him, and I emailed several other people as well who had mentioned the case, and Ruben was the only one who responded. So that was back in 2007. And Ruben and I, since 2007, have written 12 books, written or co-written along with other UFO researchers, 12 books about famous UFO cases in history. So,
wow.
So that's how it all began for me. And once we did our first book together in 2007, Mexico's Roswell,
right,
which was the case that I was coincidentally planning to include as a chapter in my book on.
Well, that's it. We're taking a little station break here because Noe's Skype crashed right there. We had to move on with him on a landline, which you're lucky to be a podcast listener, actually, because the live listeners had to listen to maybe 5 minutes of the fumbling trying to get this together. So Noe's coming right back right here on his phone, which isn't great, but it's better than not having a show. Okay. Is this you, Noe?
Yeah, this is me. I'm sorry. I'm having all kinds of technical issues, obviously, and
yeah.
But we can continue this way.
Yeah. Okay. Are you calling me from a landline?
Yes.
Okay. So I think the live listener out there, I was just blabbing here, saying absolutely nothing that makes any sense, but I think the listener can still call in on this number, and I can take 2 calls if you'd like, if someone wants to call in at some point.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's not a problem.
And that number is 603-967-4030. Thank you, live listeners, for hanging in. So we're back with Noe Torres. And you know what? With all this happening, I didn't have my pen and paper handy to write where we left off. And you may have been talking for another 20 minutes before you realized it was a problem, so I have no idea.
Yes, unfortunately I did. I get wound up and I get going, and I didn't even look down at my screen.
All right. So let me just ask you a couple of questions to backtrack a little bit. Your mother's sighting, you don't hear of a lot of sightings when someone has they hear sound. If my mother was telling me a story like that, I would have paid attention to what was going on myself. I believe you left off where you were talking about being a librarian and making sure there was a healthy supply of UFO books wherever you have worked.
Yeah, because of my own interest in the topic, I've always had a fully stocked collection of UFO books, and people always come up to me and ask me about the topic because I am frequently interviewed by the local media about the topic of UFOs, and I also appear at various local venues speaking about it. So a lot of folks in this community are familiar with my interest in the topic, and so I do field a lot of questions about it. I want to say reference questions, but some of them are a bit more personal than that. People wanting me to hear their own experiences. And it's amazing to me how many people have had an experience or know somebody close to them who has in almost every area of the country that I travel. And they don't feel safe a lot of times sharing it with somebody who could possibly ridicule them. They don't know how this person will react if they tell them this story.
No, you're going to have to. Pardon me. You're going to have to get into your phone more. We're barely hearing you.
Yeah.
Here.
So a lot of folks are hesitant to tell anyone about their experience. But in my case, because I'm appearing as a speaker on the topic, then they feel more comfortable.
I see. You're right. I've been in mixed crowds, and it comes up, and I'm actually surprised that you're almost anyone you talk to, if you're comfortable enough to actually bring up the subject. If it's not them, then they're open-minded about it, and it's happening in my business too. More and more people, since if anyone does any search on the internet with my name, you'll see antiques first, and then you'll see UFOs second. So there's a lot of people that in the last few weeks that have found out that I'm actually into this topic. I haven't gotten any grief about it. Now, speaking of that, you stock the library full. You do all this art. Do you get ridiculed at all, or are people pretty okay with you and this topic?
Well, absolutely no ridicule whatsoever. And I should say that I am I subject every story I hear, every UFO story I hear, as I feel everybody should, to a high degree of skepticism and critical review. It's very important for us to, of course, in this field, be very, very careful about spreading information that has not been verified and that possibly is entirely inaccurate, possibly made up. So I tend to I stick close to cases that have had what I feel is a proper amount of research done and documentation and eyewitnesses who have been found to be credible in telling their story. So we try our very best to do that. So I have never found myself feeling as though I'm the subject of ridicule or anyone saying anything bad about me. And like I say, but the amazing thing for me is I speak a lot at local venues, as I mentioned, and there's usually a line of people waiting to talk to me personally after the talk because they want to share with me their own feelings and encounters that they themselves have had or someone in their family has had. And that's been the most amazing part for me, how many of the people that I live close to here and that walk past every day, work with and so forth, feel that they have encountered something along the same lines in their own life experience. So that's been a strange experience for me.
Now, I have to say this quickly. What type of phone did you call me back on?
This is just a regular house telephone.
Okay, you're not on speakerphone, are you?
For the house.
You're not on speakerphone?
No.
Okay. I hear the button, like the numerical button, pushed every now and then. So just be aware of that, if you would. So.
Okay. Well, I'm probably too close to it, trying to speak up closer to the microphone, but I'll try to avoid that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. So let's get into some of the topics that we plan to talk about. You and Ruben and a bunch of other people are coming up. I believe it's next weekend. Is that right? A week from this weekend on the 16th.
Yeah, that's April 16th. It's a Saturday, and it's a really neat new thing. It's a new event for in UFO circles that has never been done before, and it's about a UFO case that's been known for quite some time. It's called the Aurora Ufo Crash of 1897, which seems like a really long time ago. It's kind of during the Wild West days, and it has a lot of interesting appeal to UFO researchers because it happened in an era before airplanes existed and before most kinds of air vehicles existed. There were some hot air balloons in that general time frame, but there wasn't much flying in the sky except birds. So 1897, April is when this incident occurred, and all these years, over 100 years later, the place where it happened, Aurora, Texas, is having the first ever official city commemoration of the event, and they've invited a number of really, really top UFO researchers and speakers, including Travis Walton and Jim Mars, Nick Redfern, to appear in commemoration of that event.
Yeah, that's great. So this is the first time. Now let's talk about that particular case. This was 3 years or so before there were any powered dirigibles, right?
That's correct. We had there were some hot air balloons, but the dirigibles that could be steered, that were motor powered, were just still being developed at that time.
And can you describe the incident to the listener, please?
Yeah, and before I launch into that, I just want to say that in 1897, science fiction was virtually unknown. H.G. Wells had not published War of the Worlds. Airplanes and space vehicles were not in anyone's vocabulary. There would have been, in my way of thinking, there would have been very little reason for someone to suddenly make up a story about UFOs crashing on Earth and a creature that did not appear to be from planet Earth being found in the wreckage. It just, to me, is a stretch of the imagination to think that somebody would just out of the blue make something like that up. But the story was that on April 17th, 1897, 3 years before the turn of the century, and I should also note 50 years before the reported crash of a UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, which happened in 1947. So this was 1897, 50 years before, about 30 miles from Fort Worth, Texas, about 30 miles west-northwest of Fort Worth, Texas. The observers in town, a number of observers told the local newspapers. The article later appeared in the Fort Worth newspaper and in the Dallas Morning News in 1897. So these observers or witnesses told the newspapers that there was an object that drifted into town going at a slow rate of speed. It was metallic and appeared to weigh several tons from its appearance. And as it drifted over the town, it came into collision with a windmill in town. And we don't know whether it was related to the collision with the windmill, or that was just, the fact that it collided with the windmill had nothing to do with the fact that it exploded soon afterward. It went to pieces was the exact language that was used by one witness, right over the center of the small town, which had, around 2,000, population of around 2,000 people at that time. So when the townspeople gathered around to see what had happened, they were looking through this debris. It was metallic. One of the witnesses described it as looking like a cross between aluminum and silver. And when they were looking through these pieces of metal, they found in the midst of them a small humanoid being that one witness said was clearly not an inhabitant of this world. So what happened next was people from all the neighboring towns, according to the newspaper accounts, came to see this amazing, wondrous thing. strange object that had crashed, pieces of metal everywhere over a wide area. They found pieces of paper with, or what seemed to be paper, with writing on it that one of the witnesses described as being similar in appearance to hieroglyphics. It was not any known language that anybody could tell.
All right, hang on just a moment.
To decipher that.
Hang on just a moment, if you would. Ruben, how are you?
Marty.
Hey, glad to have you on the show. So, Ruben Uriarte, he actually has, his Skype is working, Noe. How about that?
Oh, that's fantastic.
We've had some issues, but we're going to move on here. Now, I will tell you that Noe is right dead center in the middle of telling the story about the Aurora incident, the crash.
Oh, very good, very good. I'll sit quietly here.
All right, Noe, continue if you would.
So as I mentioned, according to the newspaper accounts from both the Fort Worth and Dallas newspapers in April 1897, this object crashed in the middle of town. It hit a windmill on the way down, exploded. Debris came raining down. A lot of people assume that the collision with the windmill caused the crash, but that's based on the eyewitness descriptions. I would say not. It apparently was already in stress, and it exploded, and I think the collision with the windmill was just coincidental or incidental. But in any event, strewn among the wreckage, or in the midst of all the wreckage that was strewn over a wide area, there was found this small humanoid being, which was described as not an inhabitant of this world in the newspaper accounts. So this, the people checked the pilot's body, and it was on the body of this pilot that they found papers written in an unknown language. They thought that this might have been a record of the journeys, the pilot's journeys that he had made, but nobody knew how to interpret them. And one of the witnesses said, quote, "They were written in some unknown hieroglyphics and could not be understood." So the townspeople then, there were many visitors from surrounding towns that showed up wanting to see the object that had crashed and the being. And so they came from miles around, and the newspaper accounts, interestingly enough, say that they gathered pieces of the wreckage and took it with them. So we don't know how much of this material may be out there in people's attics, stored away in that whole area from all the people that came out and collected pieces. So, and then finally, the newspaper accounts closed by saying that the townspeople wanted to give the being a proper Christian burial. And so they gathered up the body and they buried it in the town cemetery, which still exists today, although unfortunately the exact location of the grave is not known. It's been lost over the years. There was a headstone, which some witnesses have stated included a picture of a disc-shaped object, which was a representation of the object before it crashed. But the headstone disappeared, and nobody knows the exact location of the grave. It's thought to be there still in the Aurora Town Cemetery.
Wow. Now, the one thing that puzzled me when you said it was that there was a witness that mentioned that the debris looked a lot like a cross between silver and aluminum, but at that time, wasn't aluminum a very rare substance? Like no one would ever see it?
Yeah, and that's a direct quote from the article in the Dallas Morning News from April 19th, 1897.
Yeah.
What it actually says is the ship was too badly wrecked to form any conclusion as to its construction or motive power. It was built of an unknown metal resembling somewhat a mixture of aluminum and silver.
Wow.
And it must have weighed several tons. And I thought all of that description, all of that detail in that description is pretty interesting for this time period.
Absolutely. So before we go on in this case, I wanted to officially welcome Ruben to the show. How are you, Ruben?
Good, dear. I was hope you could hear me pretty well. I always find the Aurora Crash very interesting, what Noe's covering. In fact, yesterday I came across some newspaper clippings of the Aurora Crash, and I was just glancing through them, and there was a newspaper article, I believe back in 1979, where they interviewed several people, and they actually had supposedly a piece of the metal small little piece of metal that they had analyzed, as well as witnesses. There was a 92-year-old woman that remembered when she was a young kid all the interesting developments that was going on in her town and how they were going about to bury. So, I mean, it's really interesting to having her point of view in that newspaper article. I mean, I think, Noe, I may have sent that to you a while back, but if not, I'll definitely try to forward to you to find it. And it's there's some interesting information in those newspaper clippings, but absolutely, it's one of those gems of history. And also during that period of time, there was a great airship sighting. So this happened right around during that period, from throughout here in California and in other parts of the Southwest, and including Mexico. They were also having their sightings of these airships. So it's interesting how the Aurora Crash ties right into this.
Now, where would one find these newspaper clippings? Is this something you did through like the old microfiche way, or is this some way you found this online?
Oh, no, actually, these are actual paper clippings. I was very fortunate to have acquired files from several investigators that have passed away and researchers, and they've donated and gave me their books as well as some of the research material. And way back, MUFON did have a clipping service where people would go through all the newspapers and find any articles related to UFOs. And that's what I find most fascinating. In fact, Noe may have mentioned, if he hasn't yet, the Cowboys and Aliens book. That was all based on newspaper articles from back then in the 1880s or during the 1800s of accounts written. And, of course, back then we didn't have anything that was flying during that period of time. We didn't have airplanes, so whatever account how it relates to Aurora, obviously, wasn't. No, people nowadays can't say, well, it was a balloon or was this or that, because, quite frankly, we didn't have that much happening up in the air until as technology improved. So the newspaper, going back to the newspaper clippings, it's amazing. Some of the stuff that I find, it goes back to the 60s, the 50s, and gives you a very good idea of what was going on back then with the politics of UFOs and how it relates to today.
Right. Now, so this, I would say that this is probably the the earliest UFO, well, definitely the earliest UFO crash. Then there were, the sightings. I don't think that you're going to find too much out there that is documented like in newspapers. That's this early.
Well, actually, there are other accounts in the book Cowboys and Aliens of other UFO crashes that people had encountered. I think one of the earliest was back in 1854. I can't remember quite if that's the exact date, Noe. Yeah.
Let's backtrack and tell them about our book. We don't want to get anybody confused with the fictional movie by Spielberg. Our book, Ruben and I did a book, and along with, it was actually written by myself and John LeMay, and Ruben helped with the research. We did a book called The Real Cowboys and Aliens. We published it in 2012, and it was subtitled UFO Encounters of the Old West. And what it was around the time that Spielberg's movie Cowboys and Aliens, which was total fiction, lots of explosions, lots of really weird aliens trying to steal Earth's resources. Those of us who saw it, it was a delightful, entertaining picture on many levels, but certainly was not in any way an accurate representation of the very real UFO encounters that occurred in the 1800s in North America. So around the time that Spielberg's movie was about to come out, we were asked the question by several people, were there really encounters between people living in the Old West in North America and UFOs and UFO occupants? And the answer was a resounding yes, because we found many, many accounts in the documents of the time, the newspapers and other periodicals, giving detailed descriptions from seemingly highly credible witnesses, including law enforcement agents and other very respected townspeople of that era, who claim to have seen UFOs flying around and also have seen beings who were standing near objects that had landed. So it's a fascinating study, and Ruben and I came out with this book, John LeMay and Ruben helped, called The Real Cowboys and Aliens. And we had a chapter in that book about the Aurora UFO crash in 1897 that we've been talking about on the program tonight. And it is one of the more popular talks, wouldn't you say, Ruben? Whenever we speak about our book, The Real Cowboys and Aliens, we really get good response from the audiences. People love hearing about these old UFO cases from long before there were any objects in the sky flying around, man-made objects. So 1864 is the first chapter in the book. It's about the crash of a strange object in the Rocky Mountains. It's called Rocky Mountain UFO Explosion. And so that actually happened. That is the first documented case that we could find for our book of a reported UFO crash. So that was even earlier than the 1897 date of the Aurora incident, interestingly enough.
All right, wow. So just a couple of things. What about, I've heard that, or I read somewhere that the reporter, Hayden or whatever his name was, that wrote that?
Hayden, yes.
I heard that he claimed later that he made the whole thing up. Have you looked into that?
Yes, I have. I have heard that claim, but it was a second-hand claim. I have never found any documents or direct evidence of him saying those words. Rather, there was a lady whose name escapes me now who claims she overheard him saying that. And another critical viewpoint on the Aurora incident is that because the town was in dire economic shape, some of the businesses and industries in the town had closed, and the town was in danger of basically drying up and blowing away, that because of all that, this story was made up in order to bring visitors and tourism to the area. This is 1897 we're talking about, and that once again is one person's conjecture. That she in her mind is convinced that because the town had some economic hardships, then this story must have been a way to attempt to revitalize the town. And that was her opinion on why this story suddenly appeared in the paper. But I have never seen any direct evidence that indicates that that was the actual reason. That was just her take on it.
Okay. Now, Ruben, I'm going to ask you this. What has there been any anyone looking into trying to exhume the body to examine, to see if they can find the body, first of all?
Oh, I think I'm trying to look for my my clippings just in case I wanted to share some of the information. But there has been attempts, and they were trying to exhume the body. And I believe they went and developed a landmark, right, dedicating the actual UFO crash as a landmark there in the city. That's
absolutely correct. It's one of the few state historical markers that exists in the United States that actually commemorates a UFO event. Because if you go to the Aurora Town Cemetery, which, by the way, the city is going to be offering shuttle tours of both the cemetery and the crash site where this happened in 1897. They're going to be offering actual tours of those two locations on Saturday, April 16th, as part of the this event we've been talking about called the Aurora Alien Encounter. And these folks are really, really serious about commemorating this as an actual historical event. There was a city proclamation that was passed by the town of Aurora, and the city administrator there is a person that I'm really, really looking forward to spending some time talking to, Dr. Tony Wheeler. Her grandfather was born in Aurora shortly after the Aurora incident, and he knew a lot of the old-timers who lived at the time of the Aurora crash. And Dr. Wheeler, who is now the city administrator in Aurora, is one of the big movers and shakers of this commemorative event that's happening in 2 weeks. And she is going to, as she guides people to the two sites, the actual crash site of the object and the site where the cemetery where the body was later buried, as she takes people through there, she's going to kind of narrate and tell the stories that she heard, through her family, through her grandfather, about the incident. So this is kind of a unique insider's perspective. And as I said, because of her family history and her familiarity with the area and with the story, she is the perfect candidate to guide these tours.
Right.
Go ahead. If I recall that, weren't they also keeping the actual location secret as far as the actual where the body was? I'm trying to recall how that played into that.
No, what happened was that the grave marker that was in place was stolen or removed at some point, we think in the late 60s, early 70s. And they basically, nobody kept track of where the actual grave was. And so there is an ordinance or a regulation there that prevents anyone from exhuming any of the remains there. So past attempts, I would assume, unless it's law enforcement related, like in an investigation involving a crime, they don't allow anybody to dig up remains there. So basically, several groups have tried to obtain permission and have been denied it, and that's still the standing policy. So there have been attempts to use ground-penetrating radar and other technologies, but the results have been inconclusive. The UFO hunters had an episode where ground-penetrating radar found some interesting underground, it's kind of like it works sort of like an ultrasound, and there was an interesting underground object that, there was obviously a mass there, and it could be seen using the equipment, but it was indefinite as to whether that was the actual body of the buried spaceman or not.
Wow. Noe, just if you would, try to watch your phone dial pad, if you would, please.
I sure will. Thank you.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to be talking about actually the Cisco Grove incident and part of the second hour, and we're going to continue on this conversation. But Ruben, back to you. Is this case just one of those total baffling ones that, we're probably at this point, being 100 plus years old, we'll never find any new evidence, or do you think something will change in as far as what the cemetery management is involved, that eventually they'll let there being I was going to mention ground penetrating radar, and obviously they may know where it is. Do you think anything will change and this can be actually figured out? Because if there was indeed something from not this earth buried under there, then you'd have an answer to a lot of questions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that both Noe and I really enjoy is going through these historical documents. And a particular case, it's really never settled because there always seems to be, one way or another, more additional evidence that'll show up. And it'll be quite interesting to see at this conference what some of the additional latest information that might be coming out. And so it is one of several important cases here in ufology. And I think over the long run, who knows? There might be a connection. Just like what we did, we found a connection between UFO crash retrievals and we found some of the interesting procedures and operations that the Air Force was involved in, and all those different players that played an important part in the crash retrieval. So absolutely, I think we'll always seem to learn something new. And it's something that should never be forgotten, because it was something very significant that happened in that particular area, in that city, and people need to take a look at that. That's one of the reasons why we're seeing an interest by cities, and that are interested in mobilizing people in terms of their history. The chambers of commerce, for example, Roswell, New Mexico, they've turned the 1947 incident into a very large event where thousands of people come. That was some of the goals that both Noe and I have had with using the border zone conferences, of educating people about what was going on. And it's catching on, and there's other towns that have been doing that as well, where they will focus on a particular paranormal event and get a lot of tourists, and it just all of a sudden it'll bring probably new people involved, and who knows what other sources.
Well, that's it for the first part of the show. We thank you for listening. If you'd like to listen to the whole show, plus all the archives, all you have to do is become a member for only $2 or more per month. All that information is on our top menu bar on podcastufo.com. Thanks for listening. Also, don't forget, if you feel like helping me out, sponsoring me for getting my head completely buzzed bald next week, 1 week from tonight, go to the same website, podcastufo.com, and you'll see our One Mission Buzz Off banner. The money goes to children with cancer and their families. So anyway, thank you all, and we'll be seeing you here next week. I want to thank Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse for the music, our guests, of course, and other people that help out with the show. Thank you all. Talk to you next week, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your curiosity high.